All right, welcome back. We are going to be working on our 10 feet of space drawing. I'm doing it this way in hopes that you can actually see what I'm actually trying to draw. I think it's a better and easier way for you to see what we're working on. So I'm going to start with where we were. We've done our contour drawings, so actually drawing what we see and not what we know. You're actually drawing a continuous line so you can see that everything's related and connected. We then went to negative space drawing, where you were able to actually see the objects around the space. So if you get stuck drawing something, not sure what to do next, look around it, see what shapes you see, put those shapes together to create that space around the object, which will then in turn help you draw that actual object that you're drawing. Now we're going to work on our 10 feet of space drawings. We're working on them for about 2 weeks at least. One drawing, 2 weeks, so it's going to take some time. It's going to take patience. I'm going to highly recommend that you just do a quick sketch before you start the final. And just in your sketchbook, nothing crazy. It can be a contour of the space. It can be a blind contour of the space. It can be just a quick sketch of the space, just for you to understand the layout of what it is you're doing, because you're drawing everything that you see to fill that entire paper. Not just what you decide to draw, but everything from the beginning to the end, okay? When you start this, the way I'm going to have you recommend to do this is by drawing the very first object that you see. It could be the clipboard that you're drawing. It could be the table that you're working at. It could be the first object that you see. But no matter what, you're going to draw the first object closest to you on your paper. What object? The one closest to you. So I am right now, I'm going to try and show you guys some of this. I am right now going to show you your area that we're working at. Okay, so I'm kind of in my classroom. We're drawing straight back. Okay, the object closest to me, I'm going to say, is this table, or it could even be your paper if you wanted, or it could be the tabletop right in front of me right here. It could be any of those items, as long as you are drawing the part that's closest to you at the very kind of end of your paper right here. Okay, so I am going to start with actually drawing. I'm going to start with the table closest to me. So I'm going to actually start with the rollerblade table right here, and I am just drawing it front to back. Let me show you what I've got here so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so I just drew right here, the very edge of the rollerblade table. Okay, nothing crazy there. All right, and next what I'm going to do, the first other kind of tool I'm going to teach you today is measurement. So I'm actually using my pencil as my measuring tool, and I am going to measure distances and compare it to what I've already drawn. So what I want you guys to start understanding is the space that you think is there isn't necessarily the case, especially as it gets further back. So for instance, we're going to start off with measuring kind of the space between, if I can show you this, the space between this edge of the table and the edge of this table, okay, right here. So I'm just going to measure from here to here, that distance between the two of them, so I know where to place this edge of the table. So when I start here, I'm going to hold my pencil up. It's going to be an arm's length away. I'm going to close one eye, and I'm going to put the edge of my pencil at the tip of the table there. Whoops, that's really off for you guys. At the tip of the table here, and I'm going to measure my thumb down to see the distance to here. So I'm going to kind of lean back, and I'm measuring that, and for me, it's about a whole pencil, okay? So I got a whole pencil length at an arm's length, so I'm kind of like this. I've got a whole pencil length between the space. Can you see that? Pencil length away, one eye closed. I'm going to compare that to what I've already drawn. So when I'm leaning back, arms straight still, I'm perfectly vertical. I'm going to turn my pencil horizontal and stick it on the edge of that corner of my table right here. And I can see that it goes into about right here. So about a third of my table. Okay, about a third of my table. So how is that actually going to help me? Well, I'm going to take what I've already drawn, okay, and make it proportional. So real life, so the real life distance here, one eye closed, one arm, compared to real life table is about a third. So I know that on my drawing, if I were to go out about a third, okay, that's the distance where my table should be. So I'm going to take that distance, I'm going to turn it vertical. That's where the edge of my table needs to be. So I'm going to show you this again. Okay, this is the most confusing part, but it's probably the most helpful thing to get you to draw accurately. I'm going to measure one arm's out. It happens to be, the distance is about a pencil length away, okay? I'm doing it with one eye closed. Then I'm going to compare it to what I've already drawn, my rollerblade table, okay? And again, my back is straight, my arm is up. I'm not setting it down and leaving it and seeing what it is. I'm actually still holding it up, keeping my one eye closed, my arm is straight, okay? And it goes in about a third of the table, okay? So real life is to real life, as drawing, that's why I've already drawn this, is to drawing. So I know that that's where the distance is, okay? I can then measure how wide the table is if I want to. So how wide that gray table is. So I've got 1, 2, just over 2 pencil lengths long. So what good is that? Well, if it's 2 pencil lengths long, I can again compare it to what I've already drawn. What have I already drawn? I've drawn the rollerblade table, and I know how wide that rollerblade table is. So again, I'm gonna hold one arm out, and I'm gonna compare it. 1, 2, and just a little bit, like a quarter of that pencil, goes to right here of my rollerblade table, which is about 2/3 of the table. So I'm gonna go back to my drawing. 2/3 of my table is about right here. What good does that do me? Well, if this distance in real life is the same as the distance of my table, then I know in my drawing that this distance is the same as how wide my table should be. There's the edge of my tabletop. I can also double check, so that's one of the ways, okay? You can use measurement. I can use my pencil to actually measure real life is to real life, as then in my drawing is to my drawing. So it keeps it in proportion, okay? It keeps everything the same as to what I've already drawn. So however big you draw that first object, it's gonna keep everything else in proportion to that first object, which I know is a little confusing, and I'll help you guys through that, but hopefully it starts to give you an idea. The other thing you wanna consider is using a grid. So I can use, again, what I've already drawn, okay? And I can look and measure, okay? So I'm gonna actually see where the edge of the table lines up, of this table right here, where it lines up, okay? And I'm gonna draw a straight line down and see where it crosses, okay? For me, it actually crosses right smack dab down the middle. So I can find the middle of my clipboard and draw a very light dotted line. And I know that that's where the edge of that table needs to be. So, in reality, I know exactly the placement of this table without even having to guess, okay? I know it goes right there. And I know the actual bottom of the table goes all the way to the rollerblade table because I don't even see the bottom of it. So I know that that's the placement of the rollerblade table. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna measure the distance from the front edge of the table to the back edge. And oftentimes what people do is they do this, and they're like, oh, I know it goes back in space, so here's my humongous table. Except that's way too big for the space that it is. If you were to actually measure the distance, okay, so arms straight, I'm gonna put the tip of my pencil on the back edge of the table, my thumb on the front edge. I'm gonna compare it to what I've already drawn. So it only goes into about right there on the table, which in my drawing is only that big. So that's how deep the table needs to be versus all the way back there. So there's my rollerblade table there, okay? Then I can go back and measure the distance from the back of this table to the front of my next table, okay? And I can keep going. So here's the back of this table, there's the back of that table. I can then measure the distance from this table to the next table, which is teeny tiny. They're close. Look at that. Just a pencil tip, okay? Arms straight, one eye closed, that's my distance. Again, I'm gonna compare it to what I've already drawn, which is even smaller on my rollerblade table. It only goes about right there. So it's teeny tiny, about right there. So I'm gonna use that distance. That's how far away it needs to be. And there's my next table. And I can keep working my way back. I can also then use that halfway point. I can use the back of this table to decide what else lines up with it. If once I get to this side of the room, I can use the edge of this table to know that, for instance, the next table's over there lines directly up with the front edge of that table. You see that? I can use that as a guideline for what lines up with what. Okay, I can use the vertical line. I said halfway through this table right here was the edge of that table, right? It also lines almost perfectly up with the blue bulletin board in the back. You see that? So I know that that should line up with my blue bulletin board, and I can measure the distance, but I can also then know that it comes somewhere into play back here, my blue bulletin board. Okay, this is why it takes so long, because you're double checking, you're measuring everything. It takes time, just like those negative space. No, you're not gonna be able to socialize a ton. Yes, it's gonna take concentration, but notice how I'm not adding tons and tons and tons of detail. I'm drawing basic shapes, basic ideas of everything. So I've got my general rollerblade table. I have the first table. I've got the tabletop for the next one. Yeah, I quick threw these in just to give you guys an idea as to what I was drawing, but I didn't add the wheels. I didn't add the stuff coming out of it. I just drew the basic design. I can go back and add that stuff later. You want to get the big ideas of everything first before you move on, okay? As you go, you're going to see, obviously, it come together, but this is the type of detail I'm looking for. If you just kind of take a look here, you can kind of start to see up close all the lockers, the bricks, the windows. This was one, I think I showed you guys these the other day, but this is an idea for one it was from the library out to the elementary school. So know that if you are a person who really likes the outdoors, obviously we're stuck inside because we don't know what the weather's going to be. You can look out a window. You can look out by Mrs. Burns' room and draw out the window there to get more of a nature scene. If you really like architecture and structure, draw the interior of the building. There's a lot of very straight, strategic lines. This person obviously drew one of the 6th grade hallway. Okay, very architectural, whereas, don't know if I have another nature one. This person was looking and drawing out of the big windows by Mr. McMaster, so you can kind of see the fields out there, all the light posts, but she drew the actual window pane that she was looking through to guide that. You are also more than welcome to stay in my classroom. This person, it's just the back of my room. The sink, the brick wall, the counters, the floor. You can kind of see up close. They even have the paintings on top, all the pottery on the shelves. If you are feeling hesitant and you're just not sure what it is you want to do, or you feel like you might need a lot of my help, like this video totally threw you for a loop, which for a lot of you guys it might until you actually start practicing it. Stick close. Don't head down by the cafeteria. Stick right in this hallway, down by the exploratories, maybe even by the office. I'm going to be frequenting that area more often. This is also a huge trusting project. All the teachers know you do this. If they see you messing around, I have every right to kick you out of the space you are in and move you closer if you can't handle the spot that you are in. So choose your spot wisely. Make sure it's something you want to look at for 2 weeks, because you're going to be staring at that same space for about 2 weeks, so it's something that's interesting to you. Choose a spot location-wise with people that you can work with, that you're not distracted with and won't get in trouble by. And also make sure it's a spot that you have access to me if you need me. I will be walking around always, but there is a chance that I'll walk by certain areas by my classroom more often than I will if it's down by, like I said, the cafeteria area. I do have the right to veto your spot, but I would recommend just kind of spending 10 minutes, walk around, find an area that interests you. It has to include 10 feet of depth. You have to use some of the tools I just gave you today, so either that measuring technique with your pencil, the dotted line stuff to get everything located. Once you get a few of the items, it's a little easier because you can use the more concept of the negative space where everything's kind of a puzzle and fits together, but you do need to use that measuring stuff for those first few objects. Remember, for those first few objects, write this down if you're gonna forget. You need to draw the object that is closest to you without measuring. Okay, just draw it. The general shape, whether it's the paper, the clipboard, your shoe, your foot, the tile in front of you, and those will all count as the objects that are closest to you. Just draw it. Then after that, you need to measure arms straight, one eye closed, okay? Measure the distance between the next object you want to draw, so from one tile to the next, from your foot to the next tile, whatever it is, and compare that to, again, something you've already drawn in real life. So real life distance to real life distance of that tile or table, then compare it to what you've already drawn. So it takes up half that first tile, then go to your drawing, okay? Make a mark halfway on that paper so you know it's half that distance, so that you know that that's how big the object that you're trying to draw actually is. Okay, So try it out, do a practice one. I'll be walking around to kind of help. I'll be giving some mini sessions if you still are really confused before you head out to make sure you understand it, to help you have success as you work. We're working on this all before spring break and the week afterwards, and maybe even a day if we need it after, to make sure we're doing them correctly. Okay, hope you've watched this whole video. Feel free to rewatch it if you need to help answer any questions you've got, and have fun.